Welcome to today's episode of your English speaking practice. In this session, we will listen to a motivational story in English. This story is called The Mountain Within. It is about a young man who faces challenges, doubts, and failures, but chooses to keep going. This story will help you practice listening, reading, and speaking skills. You can repeat after me or read aloud to improve your pronunciation, rhythm, and fluency. Let's begin. In a faraway land surrounded by ancient forests and soaring mountain ranges, there existed a quiet little village that had remained unchanged for generations. Life in this village was simple and predictable. People worked in the fields, cared for their families, and avoided unnecessary risks. Among the villagers was a young man named Kai who was unlike the others. While his friends were content with the ordinary, Kai was always dreaming of something more. From the window of his small wooden home, he would gaze every day at a towering mountain that stood far beyond the village borders. This mountain, known as the Silent Peak, was the highest and most feared in the entire region. Its top was always hidden behind clouds, its slopes covered with snow and mystery. The elders of the village warned everyone to stay away. They told stories of travelers who had tried to climb it and never returned. "It's cursed," they said. "It will break your spirit, freeze your body, and leave you lost in the snow forever." But Kai didn't see danger. He saw a possibility. While others saw failure, he saw a challenge worth taking. The mountain became more than just a natural structure to him. It became a symbol of all the things he hoped for: growth, freedom, strength, and purpose. He believed that if he could reach its summit, he could prove to himself that he was capable of something extraordinary, something beyond the limits of fear and routine. For years, Kai trained quietly. He would run through the woods, climb the nearby hills, carry heavy loads on his back, and spend hours reading about survival. While his friends laughed and said, "Why do you waste your time?" Kai simply smiled and replied, "Because one day I will climb the mountain." They rolled their eyes, and even his parents, though loving, grew worried. "We want you to be safe," his mother said. "We want you to have a future," his father added. But Kai's future didn't lie in comfort. It lay somewhere far above the clouds, on the path no one dared to take. Finally, when he turned 20, Kai made his decision. He would leave the village at sunrise and begin his journey. That night, he packed a small bag with essentials: dried food, water, warm clothes, a handmade journal, a compass, and a photograph of his family. Before he left, he sat beside his parents' bed and whispered, "I love you. I will come back." As the first light touched the earth, Kai stepped out of the only world he had ever known and began walking toward the unknown. At first, the journey was gentle. The air was fresh, the birds were singing, and the earth felt firm beneath his feet. Trees swayed in the wind, and the sound of a distant river gave him comfort. But as he moved farther away from the village, the land changed. The grass disappeared, the sky grew darker, and the road became rocky and uneven. Kai had to climb over fallen trees, cross narrow bridges, and keep his balance on slippery paths. But he did not complain. With every step, he whispered to himself, "This is part of the climb." Days passed. His legs began to ache, and his back felt sore. The nights were cold, and the wind screamed like a wild animal. He built fires to stay warm and read pages from his journal to keep his mind strong. He felt a new kind of energy rise within him. He began to climb the cliff, using his hands and feet, gripping every crack he could find. His fingers bled, and he almost fell, but after hours of struggle, he reached the top. He lay on his back, staring at the sky, and smiled. "I did it," he whispered. "I'm stronger than I thought." That moment changed him. It showed him that fear was real, but it could be beaten. As he continued climbing, the weather turned worse. Snow began to fall, and the air became thin. Breathing grew harder, and he had to rest more often. He rationed his food and melted snow for water. Some days he could barely walk. He would sit in silence, staring at the white world around him, wondering if he had made a mistake. Loneliness began to crawl into his heart. Maybe they were right, he thought. Maybe I wasn't meant to do this. But then he would remember why he started, not to prove others wrong, but to prove to himself that he could finish something that mattered deeply to him. One night, as he sat near a dying fire, wrapped in his coat, shaking from the cold, he opened his journal and saw the words he had written weeks ago. Keep going, even when it hurts. He closed the book, wiped his tears, and whispered, I will. He stood up, looked at the stars, and promised himself, no matter what, I will reach the top. And so, with broken boots, tired eyes, and a heart full of determination, he kept climbing. He faced avalanches, freezing winds, and deep snow, but he also found moments of peace. The sunrise over the white peaks, the quiet songs of mountain birds, and the beauty of untouched nature that most people would never see. And slowly, step by step, he came closer to the summit. Finally, after weeks of suffering, learning, and growing, Kai stood just a few steps away from the peak. His body was shaking. His breath was shallow, but his soul was on fire. He took one final step and then another until suddenly there was no more mountain above him. He had made it. He stood on the highest point he had ever seen, surrounded by clouds, with the whole world stretched out below. The village was just a dot in the distance. The rivers sparkled like silver threads. The sun kissed his face, and the wind whispered softly, not with anger, but with pride. Kai closed his eyes and let the moment sink into every part of him. He had not only conquered a mountain, he had conquered himself. He smiled, cried, and laughed all at once. And as he looked into the sky, he said quietly, I am here. I did it. When Kai returned home, the villagers gathered around him in silence. No one laughed, no one doubted. They looked at him with wonder and respect. He didn't speak much about the journey. He didn't need to. His presence alone told the story. And slowly others began to dream again. Children drew pictures of the mountain. Young people began training. The village, once silent and afraid, began to change. Kai's climb became more than a personal victory. It became a spark for others. He had shown them that greatness lives not in comfort but in courage, that the path to something meaningful is never easy, but it is always worth it. And long after Kai grew old and his story became legend, people continued to speak of the mountain, not as a place of fear, but as a place where the brave discover who they really are. And whenever someone asked, what if I'm not strong enough? They would remember Kai, the boy who believed, the boy who climbed, the boy who showed the world that the greatest mountain is not outside, but within.